This presentation discusses the relationship between China and the United States, and it corresponds with your modern China timeline. So as we go along, please fill out the timeline. We'll do one page in one video, and then I will take a break and we'll flip over and do the second page with a second video. The relationship between China and the United States was non-existent until 1972. This was the year that the UN admitted China instead of Taiwan, and this was also the year that US President Richard Nixon makes an historic visit to Beijing. So the first year on your timeline that I'd like you to make note of is 1972. And here are some images from that historic trip. And subsequently, every president of the United States has likewise made a visit to China. In fact, President H.W. Bush was a special ambassador to China in the Ford administration. Reagan's been there, the Clintons have been there, Bush's, and President Obama visited there last year. In 1976, if you recall, Mao dies, which is the end of the Cultural Revolution, but it's also the beginning of Deng Xiaoping becoming the next leader of China. And I want you to just pay attention for a moment as to how Deng Xiaoping is dressed. You know, he is wearing, similar to what Mao used to wear, and all Chinese people, a very simple blue or gray tunic. This is going to change thanks to some of Deng Xiaoping's policies that we'll discuss later on. In 1979, the US and China established full diplomatic relations, and Deng makes a visit to the United States as well. Now, Deng Xiaoping is responsible for changing China's economy from the real command economy that Mao had established, the socialist Maoism. And instead, under his four modernizations, China's economy becomes what we call market-orientated, meaning it is similar to a free market economy. And Deng had done this, actually, he started these reforms a few years earlier, but in '84 they are announced to the world, and it's the first time that everybody else is getting wind of it. In 1986, China's first stock market opens. And then we are led to this big revolutionary year, 1989. We've talked about it already. In other parts of the world, you've got a nice, big, huge box to fill in all the events that sort of culminate in June 4th, 1989. The protests began on April 15th with a group of college students from Beijing, not unlike the way college students were protesting elsewhere. They're calling for that fifth modernization, democracy. About a month later, the government decides it would really like to clear Tiananmen Square because Mikhail Gorbachev of the Soviet Union is coming for a visit, and they would like to have a big welcoming ceremony there. But the students won't leave. And the government is really embarrassed. They have to change their plans, and at this point, they decide to impose martial law. I mean, this was an historic visit. It was the first time that China and the Soviet Union had been having these conversations or visits back and forth, first time in 30 years. And so it was hugely embarrassing, and it's at this point the government decides to intervene and crack down. The students, however, are not leaving, and instead they push the envelope even further by unveiling this huge papier-mâché statue called the Goddess of Liberty. The response by the government is to come in with military force and aggressively clear the square using gunfire and tanks. This is started on June 3rd. By June 4th, the square is cleared, and subsequently many people refer to the 1989 Tiananmen Square uprising as the June 4th uprising. June 4th is the day that we commemorate these events as well. In the process, many were killed. Is it hundreds? Is it thousands? We just don't know. The number that people in the West seem to go with is about 1,000. And here we have some images from the Tiananmen Square. This is the goddess of liberty, and you can see from here is a photo of the students building her with plaster and paper mache. She was quite large. And then, of course, this iconic picture of the one man who is standing off against the tank in Tiananmen Square. This was broadcast live all over the world via the brand new 24-hour news station, CNN. All right, just wrapping up, in the wake of this, Deng resigns his military post, and we have a new Communist Party leader who then becomes president in 1993. So if you could add underneath 89, 1993, Jiang Zemin, chosen leader and then president. And you'll notice that he is not wearing the simple gray or blue tunic of his predecessors. Instead, he is wearing a very modern, Western-looking suit. 1997, Hong Kong is returned to China. It had been a British colony for 100 years, and people were a little bit nervous because British is a full democracy, and people of Hong Kong enjoyed all the same privileges that British citizens had been enjoying, all the freedoms of speech and press and elections and that kind of thing. But China has promised that it will be one country, one united country, but a different system in Hong Kong, 2 systems. And so far that does seem to be working. Hong Kong is much more free than China, mainland China. And then closing out the first page, I would just like to note that business entrepreneurs are allowed into politics in 2001, and this is a real change of event. So the party is not just made up of politicians anymore, but we now have business leaders and more regular folk that are entering the political system.